Howdy peeps, hope you're doing well. It's been a little while since I've done a video, and admittedly of recent there's mostly been a few card readings here and there, and I'm not sure how you guys are taking them, as in I don't know how you're reacting to it. I seem to be losing subscribers, might just be a thing, but whatever, it is what it is, man. I've never been too fussed over any sort of internet fame. So I'm going to be digressing back onto some of the topics that I used to talk about, and yeah, I suppose maybe shedding some sort of light on it, or trying to, mostly for myself. Maybe it'll help you guys out in the long run as well, in some way, shape or form. You know, it's funny how you go through all the different phases of life in terms of relationships and breakups and meeting new people and getting to know what they're like, and obviously I've spoken quite a bit about the projected fantasy that a lot of us have of who we want someone to be, rather than seeing who they actually are, who they are presenting themselves to be. And sometimes the mistakes we make, sometimes through lack of judgment or lack of good judgment, and so we end up in a situation, or a situationship, as girl power advocates would like to call it. We men end up in a situationship, whereas you can potentially grow more attached to the person the more time you spend with them. And it's not necessarily because they're doing anything for you. A lot of the time it's just because they are there present with you at that moment in time. And when you go through that a few times, I'm not going to lie, for me it's left me feeling kind of cold about the situation. You know, and I'm quite a logical person when it comes to these sort of things. I like rationality, I like logic, I like seeing, and more importantly I like truth. You know, I'm very much like the tarot reference coming up. I'm like the King of Swords. You know, it's like I want the truth, I want mental clarity on everything that is going on, the whole situation and everything involved. Now the downside of that is you do end up with the potential for a negative mindset. You know, it's that thing of like, if you go looking for something, you're going to find it eventually, and if you don't find it, you'll find a way of finding it, even if it's not what you were looking for in the first place. And I'm not talking about relationships, I'm talking about some sort of truth, or some sort of additional situation, should we say, right? You could argue for like a third party involvement or something like that, right? If you're in a relationship and you start looking for these things, you know, you probably will find it, or you'll find something that is reason enough for you to want to pull the cord on that relationship. Now, if truth be told, I'd say that in that instance you wouldn't have been happy with the relationship in the first place if you're having to go looking for some form of truth or clarity on a situation. Then it's almost like you've pulled the plug on the relationship before you've actually found a reason. At the same time, I'm not saying it's a good idea just to go in with your eyes closed, you know, going in like the Two of Swords or something like that. You know, whereas your eyes are close to the situation. And even with the Two of Swords, you know, with that card, you got to remember the woman's heart, hands are covering her heart, and she has a sword in each. You know, with her back to the water, water being the place of emotions. So it can also leave you in a Two of Swords. You know, it can leave you a bit sort of cut off from your own relationship with someone else, whereas you're not willing to give it all. And in some cases a decision has to be made. You know, it's that thing of you're either in or you're out. And it's like you're either all in or you're all out. And this sounds like extremes, but it's like, you know, I think the problem now with relationships is everyone sees them as such, I think, a luxury. I think luxury is probably the best way to sort of see it, as being in that sense. Whereas, you know, I think especially more so for women, because women do get to choose at the end of the day, right? I've said it enough times and I don't need to repeat it again. They make the final decision, right? As to who they're with and who they're not with. So naturally it does put a lot of guys on edge, especially if there's been some sort of foul play going on in the past. You know, maybe there was a Three of Swords moment, there was another third party, and you know, it's that thing. It does, with me, it's not so much that it knocks my personal confidence down, it just knocks my faith in people down, which is, I think, worse, actually. You know, because it just demonstrates to me that although in the initial stages you might have met someone, got on with them really well, and sometimes as a result of the situations you have been in, or maybe even as a result of the situations they might have been in, again, this is that thing, like, this is why you need total honesty and truth in relationships in the first place. And, you know, as I've said time and time again on this one, it's like there are a lot of people out there who are very deceptive, very manipulative, refuse to tell the truth. Or it's not that they refuse to tell the truth, I think sometimes they just can't tell the truth, right? I don't think their ego will let them. You got to understand, all of this comes from a place of ego. You know, if they're deceptive or manipulative like that, you know, yeah, it does kind of make them a bit of a bad person, depending on the reason as to why they're doing it. But at the same time, I still try and have a level of empathy and sympathy for them, and whereas I know it's something that they are that way because of a situation they were in, but the problem is they haven't transcended that situation. And a lot of the time when you're looking at, like, say, a woman's perspective about men, they will argue that most guys are just like kids in adult bodies, you know, because we like to have our toys. We might like fast cars, fast motorbikes, I don't know, remote controlled aeroplanes, helicopters, remote controlled cars or boats. You might like to go fishing, right, or something like that. And it's something that we get shamed for a lot of the time, in some cases, not all the time, but in some cases. Or look, you might even like be a gamer. You might like playing your PC or your PlayStation, Xbox, whatever, right? But when that gets used against you in some way, shape or form, over the sake of a relationship, you know, this is the other thing, is accepting people for who they are. And I'm going off the topic, but I'm going to pull myself back onto it. You know, this does come from a place of ego a lot of the time. It comes from a place of they're actually not happy with themselves. They come from a place of internal lack, right? Hence they need a lot of the time a lot of validation. They need a lot of external sources to validate their maybe it's their good looks or their good personality. Even if in some cases personality wise, you know, it could be more of a front, because they're not being genuine with themselves. You know, if you look at the typical narcissistic trait, where I've said before in the previous video that it's all about them, it's me, right? Well, I mean, those kind of relationships aren't going to last anyway. Not Not if you're gonna be honest with yourself about what you want from a relationship. Not if you're gonna be honest with yourself about what you expect from a relationship. That sort of a relationship, it's got a high toxic factor going on before it's even started a lot of the time. And unfortunately, a lot of guys and girls do get themselves in these situations, and whereas maybe they want to help the other person. Truth is, you can't. They have to help themselves. They have to acknowledge that there is something wrong with them. And unfortunately, one of the things that society does these days, a lot of, and it's been on the increase, especially in the last sort of 8 to 10 years that I've noticed, it does come down to that victim mentality. Like, oh, I have these certain behavioural traits because of what happened, or whatever the excuse or reason may be, rather than dealing with what had happened and moving on from that. You see, all the time they don't deal with it, and they just pass off or palm off where it's shitty behaviours or shitty traits. They'll just palm that off as being part of who they are. And then you got to ask yourself, well, if you're wanting a relationship with someone, is that something you're willing to entertain as well? Someone that isn't going to be totally honest with you all the time, because they can't even be honest with themselves. They can't put in the necessary work on themselves to become a better version for the next person that gets involved in their life. This is why I did a video, I think it's a few months ago, about when it comes to relationships, you've got to go into them right. There can't be any of this one person's only giving 50% of what they can give and the other person's trying to give it 100. That's straight away off balance. That's like a Six of Swords, I think. Might be a Six of Swords. Could potentially be the Six of Cups. I'll have to look that one up, actually. Right. Yeah, it's the Six of Pentacles, my bad. Which is giving and receiving, help and generosity. Again, if you're in a relationship where you've got the Six of Pentacles showing up, it's not, well, in reverse. I'll point that one out before I carry on talking. It's not that, it's not going to work because you've got one person putting more effort in than the other, and then over time that is just going to cause nothing but resentment. And then as soon as you have that kind of a dynamic in a relationship, then it's pretty much over before it started. But like I say, this comes down to people that haven't actually done the necessary work on themselves. And I get it. A lot of people could sit there and think, well, hang on a second, what about you? As in me. And it's like, no, I'm far from perfect. And I've still got my issues of I'm too forgiving and I'm too willing to give people second chances. And I will compromise my own actual happiness sometimes for the sake of a fake happiness, a facade. Expecting someone to have feelings for me that they're probably not actually capable of having. Maybe through no fault of their own. You could argue for that. Or maybe it's because they haven't done the necessary work on themselves in order to improve themselves, so that when they do show up in a relationship or for a relationship, when they are manifesting that, manifesting meaning to be present, right? Be present in a relationship, that it actually shows. And again, the other thing is, a lot of people can put on an act. It's like, I can invite people round here that I might not necessarily like a great deal, but I can put on a smile and offer them the drinks and the foods and all of this, and at least make them feel comfortable. It doesn't mean I actually like them any less, it just means I'm being a good host. And that's the difference. I don't like them any less or any more for that matter. Yeah, but it does come down to that. You're just being a good host for the other person. But if the other person's coming in and they haven't actually got the best intentions for whatever reason, maybe they can't, maybe they won't, you know, ultimately they're just going to use the person that is hosting. I didn't use that word by mistake either, I used that one deliberately. Because that is what you become. You become a host and a source as a needs or means to an end to fulfill their own personal needs or wants. Whether it's sensual desires, company, food, or just someone to talk at. You'll notice I said talk at rather than talk with or talk to, because a lot of the time this is what tends to happen. So you end up just listening. And digressing back with some people, it's just all about them. So all you're going to hear is me, me, me. And it's like, well, how can you tell them to humble themselves? You know, because as soon as you do that, they're going to take offence. They're going to be like, oh yeah, you don't appreciate me. And it's like, well, I suppose in that situation you could answer with, it's not, I don't appreciate you, it's just like, it's always about you. Right? There's no us, there's no anyone else, it's just like, and this is a, you know, understanding personalities and personality disorders and the like. When they're under the impression that the whole world evolves around them, and they have an overbearing sense of grandiosity, you know, they're very grandiose about themselves, they're very holier than thou in many cases, then it just leaves the door wide open to the potential for toxicity. And then, like I say, it's how long you're willing to host that toxicity for. So, yeah, you know what, relationships do things to you over time. I don't care who you are or what you say about that. They do. And sure, it may be subjective. You know, I mean, if you look at the realistic or the reality of things, even though I've said time and time again that, you know, men going their own way is more of an ideology, right? It's an ideal world thing. It might not be necessarily what you actually want. But I think given the circumstances and given the options in some cases, it might just be the best option for some of you guys. But deep down beneath the surface of all the bullshittery that many people put on as a facade, the mask that they wear, the front that they put on, that they want the rest of the world to see, when all that gets peeled to the side, a lot of guys just wanted the same damn thing in the first place. It just became too much of a, I suppose, a financial and emotional liability, which is why they chose the path that they did, which is why we have so many channels talking about red pill philosophy. It's not really a surprise, all things considered. So, anyway, that's it for this one. Thank you all for listening, much appreciated. If you've got any thoughts, comments or opinions, feel free to jump down as always. And until the next one, stay cool, stay free. Peace out.